Well, welcome back to another episode of Buffalo Happy Hour. Mike, what's up?
Derek, we are going to start today's episode with a fact of the day.
Factamundo.
Andrew Jackson, 7th President of the United States of America.
Never heard of him.
He was a major in the U.S. Army and fought in the Battle of 1812, killed a lot of British folk. He was in many duels, in case anybody forgot, which I think everybody should be involved in one duel before they pass away.
True.
Because that's amazing. There was an assassination attempt on him, and the man's gun misfired. So Andrew beat him with his walking stick until the guy was like a pulp.
Nice.
He was 67 years old at the time, just whooping tail. He did 2 terms as a president. He had 2 bullets in his chest, one from a duel, one from the war. They couldn't be removed, so he just lived with them because, you know, they don't make them like they used to. And he ended up dying from the poisoning from those 2 bullets at his house when he retired, that he called the Hermitage, which was in Tennessee. He was buried then in his garden on the property next to his wife, Rachel. He was 78 years old. So those are the facts of the day of good old Andrew Jackson.
Is that where the phrase walk tall and carry a big stick came from?
No. However, multiple U.S. presidents did until semi-recently, so everything's fine. Having fun. But we are back. We are excited for another fun-filled week, talking about all things Buffalo Happy Hour. And
so thank you, everybody, for joining us. This is episode 107. 7, I think, right?
We forgot. Reason why is because we are recording a lot more because for reasons beyond our comprehension,
Yep.
we have Patreons.
But yeah.
So
if you want to be a part of the Patreons and get access to the episodes a week early, people are already doing that, which is wild.
they're doing it.
They wanted to hear our voice twice today, so they were so excited that we uploaded again that they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna check this out." I wonder if next week they're gonna click on the upload on YouTube and be like, "I already watched this." Do you think that's gonna happen?
Yeah, well, someone's probably going to watch it again.
Yeah.
Why not?
Comment again. Frisbee. But yeah, so if you want to be a part of our Patreon, our Happy Hour crew, you can go to patreon.com/Buffalo Happy Hour. We have 5 different tiers where you can sign up from there. We want to keep this podcast, and we will be keeping this podcast free for businesses when we go and interview them. So this is a way that we can try to make some money on the back end of it, but also involve you guys in our episodes and our Wednesday Whiskey Reviews a little bit more. So yeah, it's episode 107. Take care, guys. We'll see ya. Just kidding. But yeah, what's going on? What's your week looking like?
Weekly recap.
I got a sty. My friggin' eye hurts so bad.
Is she twitching?
No, it just like remember those. I used to have them so much when I was younger. Like those styes. You ever had one of them?
No.
Like right in your eyelash pocket, like it would puff up and it would hurt. You never had that?
No. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten LASIK.
No, that has nothing to do with it. It's your eyelid. And it used to like puff up like it was an infection or something. And I used to get them when I was younger. And I still get the feeling that I'm getting one, but then it never comes. Like, all right, it's weird. Yeah, seriously. But yeah, every time I blink right now, it's like, ding, ding, hurts.
Don't blink. Yeah, there you go.
Just have a
sit like that
contest.
the entire episode. I would literally pee if you did that the entire
I used
episode.
to win a lot of staring contests when I was younger.
Yeah, I believe it, because you're a sociopath.
Do sociopaths blink less? Is that a thing?
Google it. Could you imagine? Be like, statistically,
Statistically,
they blink at a
sociopaths
third
less.
of the rate as normal people. They have a problem.
Do sociopaths Google? Okay, so I also heard when I was listening to a podcast today that they're going to start, or there's a possibility that they're going to start analyzing your credit based off of your search history. So like banks and financial institutions can look at your search history and see if they want to give you a loan. It's kind of messed up, isn't it?
Yeah, people talk.
Well, yeah, but just the thought that someone's like, you know, this is a good idea. That's scary.
Yeah, that's why I've had a very unpopular thought and opinion and gut feeling for the longest time of there comes a point on Earth where we should thin the herd. And that's a prime example.
Yes, sociopaths tend to blink less, and there is a reason for it. Sociopaths have to be more aware of their surroundings, and this is what all predators do. So maybe I'm a sociopath.
Perfect. Now Autumn Leaf's just like going off the rails.
I'll just add that to my resume.
Yeah, there you
sociopath.
Go. Okay.
But yeah, it's kind of weird that somebody can be like, this is something that I want to put out there as an idea.
We're going to go off the deep end, and then we're going to get demonetized, and it's fine.
Well, we're not even monetized in the first place, so fire away, Michael.
Grenades for everyone.
Yeah.
No, I mean, yeah, that's terrifying, and there are people that are in positions of power that should not be, period.
Interesting.
Another fact of the day.
Yeah, Andrew Yang today announced that he's removing himself from the Democratic Party.
Yeah, because they're literally loonies.
Not all of them. It's just fascinating that Andrew Yang is. I wonder what his thought process.
Loonies.
I didn't do my research. Do you know why he left?
No, that's breaking news for me.
Oh, really?
Listen, there comes a point in both parties where it's too much.
Yeah.
In either direction, right? So where my head's at now is we're past the point of like, that's a good point. That's fair. We should entertain that, and it's just like we need to start kind of just a little love smack in the back of the head. Just be like, shut up, that's dumb, you're an idiot. Like, we don't need. Here's a prime example. There's a word in the English language, and the word is hero. Okay, hero. There's a woman in Congress who's a Democrat, and she said that this is her quote. Quote, there are heroes and sheroes, end quote. And I lost my mind.
Was it?
She was the only person.
Oh, no, it was Trudeau, where he's like, we're in a recession.
The Canadian dude?
I'm like, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
That's not even a male-dominated term. It's called a hero. It's not a hero. Or a mailman, it's hero.
She was also the only person to vote nay when proposed with the specific act that would allow the government to pursue the terrorists that were responsible for 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
And she was against the bill because she felt that it was a government overreach and it would have led to too many. It was too open-ended. It wasn't specific enough. And it's famous at this point, but the bill's verbiage is what she voted nay on. She was for going after the responsible parties. Mm-hmm. She wasn't for the verbiage written in the bill. Sure. Now, there's two sides of me because I'm not the whole political spectrum thing. I'm literally like dead nut center.
Yeah.
And
I think most of the world is.
Correct. And there's two parts of me on it. The first is kill everyone responsible for 9/11, no questions asked. It's not even like less than a heartbeat. Mm-hmm. We're going to murder everybody. The second part of me is the logical, like, non-grunt aspect where you should have somebody in a position of power that will at least entertain the position of devil's advocate mm-hmm. to ensure things are thought through.
Right.
And I'm for that. I actually had a really good discussion with a friend of mine who we are on opposite sides of the political spectrum. However, he deployed to Afghanistan in 2004. Him and I served together, and there's, you know him, mm-hmm. a lot of respect and love for him, absolute savage and barbarian, but he's like not on the same ballpark politically as I am. Biden came up in regards to he voted against the bin Laden raid, and it was fact-checked and dug into, and he goes, Biden's stance, which this came up during the debates and things where the right kind of like use it as a smear campaign, which is politics, but again, there's two parts of me. The one side is never vote against that, go shoot him in the face, which we ended up doing. The second part is, again, someone in the position of elected power should take the position of devil's advocate to then ask the tough questions and just be like, hey, did we think this through? when it was fact-checked, all that was asked by current President Joe Biden was, do we have all the intel to know that this is actually worth it? And it was raised in the Situation Room to Obama, and then he said, follow your gut. So, two sides to me, shut up, Joe, shoot him in the face. Mm-hmm. Second side, could we have more intel? Like, what intel do we already have?
I feel like that's a slippery slope, though, because you can always have more intel.
You could always have more intel, and that was my point in the discussion with my friend. Mm-hmm. And I said, at what point isn't enough? You know what I mean? Like, so, and then, of course, we went down the rabbit hole of what intel did we have? Like, did we have photos of him? Like, yeah, we had face photos. However, we literally shot him in the face, and his skull split in half. So the only way, this is fact, the only way we identified bin Laden was a SEAL, similar in height, laid next to him to decipher how tall the body was. And then based off of the intel, they knew, okay, that height matches OBL. The second thing was his ears, because we shot him in the face, so we couldn't use the face photos we had anymore because 556 said, be gone with you.
Right.
So it's wild now because I don't know if anyone, like literally anyone except for maybe Stefan Mihailu, which a lot of people don't even know of him, which kind of blows my mind, is someone who's elected and is still under the understanding and knows the understanding that they represent the people. I feel like that's kind of coagulated and lost by literally everybody in politics.
I was thinking, just to circle back, because I do want to...
Don't say that.
Just to touch base on something we previously discussed. Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
I just want to recap the Andrew Yang thing. So he says, I believe I can reach people who are outside the system more effectively. I feel more independent, he wrote. Also, on a personal level, I'll admit there has always been something of an odd fit between me and the Democratic Party. I'm not very ideological. I'm practical, making partisan arguments, particularly expressing what I often see as performative sentiment, is sometimes uncomfortable for me. I often think, okay, what can we actually do to solve the problem? I'm pretty sure there are others who feel the same way as I do. So it's an ideological difference between him and the Democratic Party, which, looking at the debates, we all could have guessed. Like, he's not a Democrat. He's a businessman. But now he's going to be independent. I just wanted to follow back up with that.
You can't say that.
But anyway.
He's a businessman. Only relates to one other human being on the face of the earth in American politics.
But he is a businessman, too.
Correct. So, can you expand on that for people that don't fully understand what's going on? Also, Derek finally just caught the
fruit fly, bro.
The fruit fly, bro, that was flying around in the last two Wednesday Whiskey reviews and today's episode. That's why I'm doing this all the time. It's not because they're watching us, because we already know they are, but there's a fruit fly. So can you expand on that for those that aren't necessarily on the up and up?
Expand on what?
On Yang's statement. He said there's an ideological difference between him and the Democratic Party. Break that down.
I don't know. This is what the article said.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. So,
great section. No, I mean, if you look at his track record when he was running for president, the only thing that he related to them on was the idea of like quasi-socialism, but not even socialism. It's just giving somebody $1,000 a month to, like, that whole discussion that you and I had. Like, if you had $1,000, you would take more risks in building your business. That's the only thing that he agreed with them on, was some sort of individual person aid that would help the economy. Everything else, he wasn't. I don't think he was there for Medicare for all, or he had some sort of, I don't want to quote the dude because I'm not too up and up with him. Because,
well, right, sure.
Yeah, but like I'm pretty sure that was the essence of him aligning with the Democratic Party, and probably the fact that he just didn't relate to the Republicans either. That was probably most of it. I mean, I'm sure that was Tulsi Gabbard's thing too. She wouldn't say that she's a Democrat.
Right, and I think the issue we're running into is that there's people that are running for office and they're forced to choose a party just because otherwise they're not going to get enough of a vote to do anything.
Did you know?
Even get into the debates.
Did you know that there was a Did you watch the Rogan podcast with Mike Baker, this last one?
Not all of it.
So I think it was towards the end of it, but he was saying that, was it Weinstein or someone?
Weinstein?
Eric Weinstein? Yeah. Or it could have been someone else, not Brett Weinstein, but Weinstein or someone else had an agreement between two people of opposite parties. It was Dan Crenshaw and Tulsi Gabbard to run as a third party. And then when that happened, when this agreement came that they were going to run as the third party for president, social media and the internet shut them down completely. They blocked their Twitter accounts, they blocked their Facebook accounts, and they blocked this initiative to run a valid third-party system.
I think that was the second time that was brought up, because that was brought up before on that podcast.
Yeah, exactly. So there's no way for, like, we even saw it with Jo Jorgensen. She was a credible third-party advocate, and she didn't even get the light of day on the stage to debate the absolute two imbeciles.
She wasn't allowed.
Yeah, exactly, because she didn't have the funding.
They literally said you're not allowed to debate.
So how do we get out of it? Because I think all of us, like, you can say that you're a Republican or a Democrat, but when you drill down to their actual policies, none of us are either of them.
And what's crazy too is I'm looking up.
I don't know that we were going into politics today, but I kind of like it.
Well, don't worry, because then we got to talk about your boy Dable. So I'm looking up 3 things. I'm looking up 3 different definitions, and they're legitimate hot topic words that a lot of people don't even know. And it's kind of funny, specifically Republicans. Some can, most can't, many conservatives cannot, and liberals, I don't know. Classical liberals, maybe. Today's progressive liberals most likely don't even know what year it is. They just want rainbows, unicorns, and open borders, and they don't even understand the ramifications of anything that they're actually spouting about.
The U.S. Supreme Court just told Biden that they have to close down the border.
They have to close down the border?
I'm pretty sure that's the article that I just saw come out that said we need more progress on the border wall.
No kidding.
Well, it's a disaster right now.
Well, not only is it a disaster, but it's a major health risk because of what they're bringing in. And
they're not getting tested either.
Well, of course they're not getting tested.
For as much of a disaster and pandemic this is, we're not.
That's one of the biggest stings that I have against today's politics. Like, you can't. Everybody says that this whole country was built on that, and, you know, your family is immigrants. I'm like, correct, but my family came here legally following the process, but then assimilated. They're not coming here illegally and then all of a sudden protesting and rioting and committing a ton of murders and then not, like, literally sitting on their rump, not doing anything good at all, and then waiting for the taxpayers to fund everything. That's absurd. That didn't occur when our grandparents arrived. There's a distinct difference in what happened between legal immigration that built the United States and what's happening today. And the problem is that there's a lot of people in both parties. I'm going to stay as politically neutral as possible, but there's people in both parties that aren't realizing the political spectrum is shifting, and it blows my mind. Liberals today don't realize, like, liberals today that are older, 45 plus years of age, don't realize that the Democratic Party has shifted so far left that the union-loving, like, good-heartedness of the Democratic Party is not necessarily existing. In a way it is, but in a very, very progressive, like, in a very progressive sense, really. Like, there's aspects of it that are good, like the gay community. Sure, if you're gay, if you're trans, whatever, and you just want to have, like, normal rights and be treated like a normal person, I don't know anyone that's against that.
Right. Except for religious people, which is a whole nother ballgame.
And that's, I mean, the religion is like the root of a lot of evil.
Yeah.
And problems, specifically the Catholic
But that's
Church.
related a lot to the Republican Party.
It is correct. Yeah. 100%. And then you also have the elements of the left today that talks about a lot of things.
Yeah.
A lot, and it's exhausting, but, like, we'll say women's rights too. I don't know anybody that doesn't think a woman should have the same rights as a man. Specific, like voting, like fundamental rights.
Yeah.
Pay is like a political argument, and there's a lot of data and facts that go both ways. But like the root of it, like every American, regardless of party, should be treated a certain way. That used to be a normal democratic, like fundamental principle as a party, and then it is not what it is today. And then the right, same, like there's radical rights, there's people that are just out of their mind, and they're so pro, almost in a sense like monopolies and business, and it just there's a middle ground, and so many people are afraid to have that conversation, which is frustrating.
Yeah. In this current environment right now, it's basically squeaky wheel gets the oil. You have squeaky wheels on both sides of the aisle, and right now they have a platform to tell everybody about it. So that's what you're getting. Regardless if it's politicians, people, just the extremes on each side feel like they should voice their opinion because we all care about their opinion, and they should spout their nonsense, and then their friends grasp onto it. But it's still an overwhelming minority of people that are on those far sides. Most people are in the center. Like even your neighbor. A lot. Your neighbor might be Democrat or might be Republican, opposite of what you are, but you guys share the same fundamental values.
Yeah.
And even like when you talk about COVID, vaccine versus non-vaccine, like I'm not getting into a vaccine discussion because the video will be taken down literally in an instant. But what I'm saying is no one's against or no one's for killing people because of the vaccine. Like regardless of your vaccination status, there's no like, I'm not getting vaccinated because I want to kill people. It's like, no, you think that it's good for your health not to. Same with the vaccine. If you get it, you think it's good for your health to get it.
Right.
Like, no one is saying I want to kill people.
Right.
It's just a difference of understanding what the pros and cons, or to you, like what the pros and cons are to you personally. We're all in agreement for the most part on many things. And it just bothers me that for some reason our politicians are on the opposite sides. Like our politicians have gotten extreme, but I feel like our country has gotten more middle.
And for which isn't reflected in voting, which is frustrating because Republicans don't vote anymore.
Yeah.
Like why? Like shut up, vote, do your civil duty, move on.
What I remember what I was going to say. The concept of term limits. You said that you don't think that there's anybody out there that is like you were obviously speaking in grand terms, but nobody out there is saying women shouldn't have rights, you know?
Right.
Like that concept. Is anybody out there saying that there should be unlimited terms?
Unlimited terms?
I've never met somebody, because like the concept of term limits in Congress, you see Pelosi, you see Mitch McConnell, you see Biden, they all have 40 years of Congress. Like they've been in the government for 40 years without being voted out. And there's all this topic of term limits and how you should only be able to serve like 2 consecutive terms like a president. I've never heard anybody that's against implementing term limits.
I haven't either.
So why isn't it a thing? It's what everybody wants. Nobody wants, except for them, which is probably the answer why it's not happening.
Correct.
But except for them, nobody wants them to be in control forever. You have an overwhelming population of the government that is considered unemployable,
and that's
because they're that old.
And that's what the issue is with Republicans that are not elected into power. So just like normal people that are on the right are now calling out Republicans in power and saying, hey, propose it, put it on the floor, vote on, do something, and then compromise and talk and have conversations. But then you're running into the clickiness of Congress and the House, and it's just that the two parties are causing their own failure. And it's not, due to being inept. It's just a lack of communication and a lot of bureaucratic red tape that's so annoying and old. So, which leads me to my point.
Do you want to talk about that Joe Biden quote that I said, though?
Yeah.
For the Supreme Court? So the article from Newsweek, which I guess probably isn't a reputable source, but that's the first one that came up, and it's all over the internet. But it says Supreme Court rules in favor of Donald Trump's plan to use $3.6 billion for the border wall. So basically, Biden, when he was elected to office, said we're not using that money for the border wall, and the U.S. Supreme Court said you have to do it because the border is a disaster. So that's kind of coming back full circle again.
Got it.
Circle back.
So there's 3 definitions. And the reason why I bring this up is because there's a lot of people on both sides of the political spectrum that use trigger words or hot topic buzzwords to prove a point.
Sorry, Sean.
And it's a talking point, but no one even knows the actual definition of what they're saying. So I'm going to read the definitions, face value of what they are, so that you, as a viewer, can understand what it actually is as a definition. The 3 words that I'm going to provide a definition for are capitalism, socialism, and communism. Because I don't know if anybody actually knows the definition of any of these words.
People don't know the definition of anything. They don't know the definition to gaslighting and the reason why gaslighting is a thing. They just throw that term out there thinking that they're smart and they're woke, and it just doesn't work because you don't know the whole history of the term gaslighting.
Yes.
But regardless, go for it.
So socialism, we're going to start there.
Okay.
It's a political and economic theory of social organization which advocates that the means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned or regulated by the community as a whole. Okay? So the community owns it. Capitalism is essentially the same thing, but it's by the state. So the definition of capitalism is it's an economic and political system in which a country's trade and industry are controlled by private owners for profit rather than the state. Got it?
Yeah. So it's not. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not owned by the state.
So what is the community aspect of it?
So socialism is owned by the community. Capitalism is owned by the actual
individual.
business.
Yeah. But what is
the individual that owns the business?
Right. So what do they define community as?
It just says by the community as a whole.
Okay.
So the people, I'm assuming. Now for capitalism.
So for you guys that don't understand, when you're talking about socialism, your individual success isn't in your control, basically.
Yeah. And then communism is a political theory, obviously derived from Karl Marx, advocating class war and leading to a society in which all property is publicly owned and each person works and is paid according to their abilities and needs.
Sounds pretty good.
So if you look at... Yeah, right. So if you look at what we have in the United States of America, it's interesting because, like, we kind of blended a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
Our tax dollars fund aspects of socialism. We have taxes in the first place, but you're allowed to start this.
Right.
You're allowed to start your own business, and there's a free market, and there's no monopolies anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously there's people with greed. They started that, and then the government stepped in and said no more monopolies, and then that was it. So, like, Rockefellers and all those people are no longer, the guy that owns Hershey and Mars.
There's de facto monopolies, but they're not.
Yeah.
Like, you can still take it over. Like, for a while, MySpace was a monopoly, and then Facebook came and took it over. So it's not like you can logistically create a new social media site that can take over Facebook. It might be hard, and it might be near impossible, but you can do it. There's nothing stopping that.
On a fundamental, yes.
Right,
And
yeah.
then once you practically do it, Facebook is probably going to pull some dark arts and then literally remove you from big
but
tech.
conceptually, nothing's there to happen.
Correct.
Yeah.
So those are the definitions as definitions, okay? So that's that. That's that. Y'all can make your own opinions. Derek and I have our own opinions.
Vastly different opinions, by the way. We're two completely different people.
Oh, yeah. But those are the definitions. So I just wanted to clear that and make sure that everyone's tracking what those 3 definitions are. And obviously people know where I stand on things.
What are your thoughts as to why you felt you needed to clarify those 3 definitions? What do you think people misconstrue the most?
I just think people are ignorant inherently.
Well, yeah, but specifically
because you
to
don't
those
know
3
what you don't know.
definitions.
But it's because it's
People
such
are dumb. Next question.
Yeah, literally, people are dumb. But it's honestly because there's so much back and forth between the 2 political parties, and it's just social media talking points back and forth. There's no actual conversation being had.
So do you think that the answer is not capitalism or socialism? It's what we currently have, which is a merge of both?
Yeah.
Because you can't be full capitalism, because
Correct.
there's socialism aspects that incorporate our daily lives, like police departments, fire departments, like everything that people always say, like, you like socialism because of this. Like, yeah, I get it. But like, it's merging the both. So each way isn't the right way to go. It's this merge of both. Unless you live in a random town that you're not getting any funding from anybody, then yeah, form your own police force. But again, when you form your own police force, there's still going to be aspects of who's paying that guy.
The system in place is the system that works. Could it be better and or more efficient? I mean, sure.
I think,
but like you have to be very specific on what you're trying to modify and streamline to be more efficient and better.
I think too, in that same vein, it needs to be more transparent. I think that's the key. Is that tax dollars and allocation of funds needs to be more transparent when you're talking about these socialism structures in a capitalism world.
I'm convinced.
I'm a material world.
I'm convinced people in government are just being paid way too much, and their benefits are too cush. The whole job is too cushy. Getting into it is an absolute nightmare, and it's polarizing, and it ruins your life, and it's not worth it. But once you're in, you're in. And it's the whole thing is just such a cancer and disease and not worth any energy.
I mean, we talked about this before.
I'm sick of it.
You wouldn't get into it. As passionate as you are,
I can't.
The second that you get into it, your life is ruined for the most part.
Yeah, I can't.
Because they're going to dig up stuff that's not even true. Like, that's the toxic environment when you're talking about politics. And that is something that is de-incentivizing people from getting into politics in the first place. We want to change the culture of politicians and do all this stuff, but if you're not incentivizing good people to get into politics, it's never going to change, because you're going to get a Trump that goes in who literally doesn't care about anything to go in and be like, this is who I am.
Yeah.
Take it or leave it.
Right.
And that's just how it's going to be, because he doesn't care what people think, because he's not like a good person. I mean, we can all say that, but that's who you're getting, because I'm not going in. Are you going in?
No.
Are you guys going in? Let us know in the comments below. Are you going into politics?
Of course not.
Join our Patreon first, and then we'll talk.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with, the Hillarys and the career politicians, and it's just not. They're just vile human beings, and they're so egotistical, and it's exhausting. So, all right, Bills by $1 billion. Brian Daboll. Doing great things. We've outscored opponents.
119-21, right? Something like that?
Something higher now.
Yeah. No, that was it. That's the stat from 3 weeks.
Hold on, I got it.
119 or 108 or something to 21.
I got a fun-filled stat for you that will make you smile inside.
Good. I want to smile.
Okay. The Bills' last 7 regular season games, stemming back to 2020. Okay, Daboll was still here.
Doubt it.
We beat the we beat the Broncos 48-19. Patriots, we beat them 38-9. Dolphins 56-26. Steelers lost 16-23. Dolphins win 35-0. Washington win 43-21. Texans win 40-0. In our last 6 regular season wins, we averaged a game 43.3 points. Held opponents to 12.5. Shout out Leslie Frazier.
Oh, yeah.
Best opponents by average of 30.8 points per game. Beat opponents by average of 30.8 points per game. Total combined points scored, Bills 260, opponents 75. 6 out of our last 7 games were absolute domination. So if our combined points scored is 260 and our opponents are 75, scoring 260 points in the last 6 games, we can talk roster until we're blue in the face. Mm-hmm. But like we discussed on Sunday off air, there comes a point where it's a play call and then the execution of that play call.
Sure.
And if the execution fails, then the play call will always look bad. And that's kind of where we agreed, where we're just like, what did you think of that play call? And I'm like,
Sure.
I blame Moss because he didn't get his head around fast enough like he was supposed to when he ran that route to catch the ball. So
okay, but can we agree on the opposite of that?
Which is
a good execution basically discounts a bad play call. So a bad play call can be still a bad play call as long as the execution's good. Can we agree on that?
To an extent.
How is that the reverse of that 100% true, but mine is to an extent?
Because you can have the best roster in the world, and a bad play call will get blown up by a good defense.
See, I don't agree with that at all.
Why?
The Patriots dynasty did not always have a good offensive coordinator the entire time that they were there, or a good play caller the entire time that they were there. And yet they were dominant for 10 years straight.
Because of one quarterback.
A good play, a good player, a good execution can discount a bad play call. That's what I'm getting at.
Oh, are we doing the chess thing?
No, I'm just throwing out a point, man. That's all I'm saying is that you can have a bad play call. And listen, I want Dable to succeed. I want us to have a good offensive play call.
He is succeeding.
Yeah. Well, okay, great, sure. But what I want is you to understand that we have an extremely talented team around us. We have a quarterback that can literally throw over the mountains. We have Diggs, Beasley, and Sanders. This is the best roster that we've had in how long?
But what about when he was first the OC, like his first year or two as an OC, when we didn't have those pieces to the puzzle? Was he still a bad OC?
Yeah.
Why?
I mean, you can go back. Our record wasn't very good then. We weren't scoring as many points back then. Our roster probably complimented him and is limiting his bad play calls because of how talented they are. Like, and I'll give you, so talking about this last week.
And this, real quick, this encompasses the fact that as an offensive coordinator, you have an end plan for your game plan and playbook. Yeah?
What do you mean?
There's levels to it.
Sure. For like different aspects of the game? Is that what you're getting at? Like a middle end?
As an offense. So a defensive coordinator will say, we're going to run a 3-4. But there's levels to that 3-4 defense. Here is my 3-4 defense. Okay? An offensive coordinator will come forward and say, I run the triple option as an offense. But it's not the stereotypical triple option. If I can get A, B, and C, whether it's, two tailbacks or a tailback and a fullback and a quarterback that can comprehend what the play is, I also need these pieces to make everything work on an execution level. So I need a couple tackles, I need a really good pulling guard, and then I need a center that can make adjustments on the field to call out the disguised coverages that they're seeing in the trench that I might miss just because helmets blend together and I'm not necessarily seeing, hey, he's now a 3 technique. Mm-hmm. So there's that aspect. So we're moving forward in the conversation assuming that Dable is a bad OC with everybody understanding that there's levels to his offense. Yeah? Because when he first got here, we weren't good, but it was because he was only using less than a quarter of what his actual offense is by design. Because he goes, hey, I can't plug this guy to run this play, which is in my offense, because we're not there yet by a roster, which is why you have McDermott and Bean pulling in that talent so that we can then use the full gamut of the same as the defense.
Yeah, and to that I completely agree with you. But I want to stipulate by saying he's not a bad offensive play or a bad offensive coordinator, because when you're talking about the job of offensive coordinators to groom talent and to basically be a mentor, kind of like a head coach, there's an aspect of it that is specifically play calling, which is what I'm saying can be better. Just want to clear that out there.
I was under the impression that you didn't think he was a good offensive coordinator at all. He was going to be a better head coach and a better mentor than an offensive coordinator.
And that's what I'm saying. That part of being an offensive coordinator is good. Like, he is grooming Josh Allen to be a great person, great dude, a great quarterback. I'm not saying that. I'm saying his play calling is suspect sometimes. That's always been my position even from the start.
So you're taking something smaller than 1/16 of his entire job as an OC, and you're saying that could be better, right?
Correct. Which has been my stance from the entire start of this. I always questioned his offensive play calling, and I thought that how he handled Josh is this one reason why Mitch Trubisky came here and took less money, is because he liked the way that Josh was being groomed. I never said that I didn't like that part. I'm saying I don't like his play calling in certain situations that are tough. I have a feeling this Kansas City game is going to be interesting from an offensive play calling standpoint, because he's going to be throwing out some crazy stuff that they didn't see from us in the AFC Championship game that's going to be different.
Well, but they also have like the 30th ranked defense in the league.
Right, so it's not very good.
They are horrendous. Right,
so it's going to be interesting.
Jalen Hurts threw like 300-plus yards on them.
So I'm going to be on the record here. If we are not aggressive, and I want your opinion on this, if we're not aggressive in this Kansas City game, like if there's a 4th and 1 on the 50-yard line, there's situational aspects, obviously, so we can't make that decision right now. But if we're not aggressive in key parts of the game, will you then agree with me to an extent that he could be better? Or the offensive play calling in the game could be better? Again, I don't want to put it on him, because McDermott could say, "It's that, we're going to do this."
And
but the offensive play calling
But how do
we
know that happened?
Well, that's why I'm saying take Dable out of it. Just say our offensive play calling, because sure, it's fun for you and I to joke around and say, "I hate Dable. I hope he dies." Like, it's fun for us to say that because we're just two idiots talking about this. But in essence, my entire gripe with the current situation is the way that we're calling offensive plays could be better.
So there's two parts to my question. One, it's very tough for me to just be like, yeah, it's Dable, because there's literally more times than not, Allen is doing what Peyton Manning used to do when he was with the Colts, where he would look at the sideline and go like that, and then he's just like, I don't give a shit about I don't care about statistics. It's 4th and 1. I'm getting this first down, and we're gonna keep trucking. There's also McDermott, where it's frustrating for us as fans who don't have the headset to listen to everything, because in that situation we're like, do this, like whatever this is, or just punt, and then all of a sudden they do something totally different, and then we're like, what is going on? And then the announcers are like, oh, McDermott made the call to do this, and we're just like, so it's not. And then obviously we're texting, going back and forth. Viewers don't know that, but it's just like, because they're not reading our text. But that's the frustrating part from our standpoint, because, all 6 of them, because we're all in a group chat. Because that's the frustrating part, because we're just like, oh my God, there's so many times where it could potentially be specifically Dable, but then the head coach steps in, or Allen steps in, or, whatever. The other part is this game. I don't know how much time you've spent listening to 550 in the last week.
Not too much. Only when I go to the gym and back. So like a half hour, 3-4 times a week.
Okay. So the vibe for this week's game, which this releases like after the game.
The day
after, right?
12 hours after.
Yeah. So the vibe of this game is like, we'll die for a win. We will literally die for the win.
Which, do you agree with that?
1,000%.
Absolutely. Okay,
because there's...
To our patrons, it's available 8 hours after. Everybody else, you have to wait another week. Sorry.
Yeah. So it's... here's the thing. Yes, we lost to them in the AFC Championship game. But because of how the schedule came out, because of how their defense is playing in Kansas City right now, we are in a very, very good spot to clinch and then host, if all things work out, to host the AFC Championship game at home. And at the end of every year, there's locker cleanout day, there's meetings with the coaches, and you sit down and go over like your goals for the offseason and things like that. But then our front office sits down and says, this is our goal for next year, which isn't necessarily uncommon in the NFL, right? However, it's now known what our goal is as an organization for this year, which came out. And I don't know if you heard it, but the goal from McDermott was to host the AFC Championship game at home this year. And winning the division is obviously a part of that. And that's kind of where their head's at, which is monumental because we haven't had anything like that since the 90s. So
to that be our goal instead of let's make the playoffs is amazing.
Or 9-7.
Right, yeah.
For 9-7, we had a good year.
Yeah.
Like, let's just beat 7-9.
Right.
So it's refreshing, but extremely motivating. The issue is that it's away.
Yeah.
And it's going to be super loud. So we have to play really, really good football on all three sides of the ball.
So I'm going to give you 2 scenarios, and I want your input on 1, how you think it's going to play, and 2, how you would want it to play, because it could be different. So let's say it is 27-34. We are up by a touchdown, and we are on their 45-yard line with 2 minutes left. It's 4th and 1. Do you go for it? Because one, if it's 27, our defense has been doing good, but hasn't been able to stop Mahomes on every drive, and you have a magician in their backfield there.
Who are we playing?
Kansas City. So I'm talking about this week right here. So if you don't and you punt it, you're going to give Mahomes the ability to march all the way down the field with 2 minutes left and not give us any time. Let's make it even more interesting. Let's say it's 28-34. So if they get a touchdown, they win. I know, I'm throwing the kitchen sink at you. And somebody had an abortion. No, I'm just kidding. So we're...
but not in Texas.
Yeah. So that's the situation. We're at their 45-yard line. It's 4th and 1. Do we punt or do we go for the 4th and 1 or the 4th down conversion? Because this might be where you and I might differ a little bit.
I'm saying go for it.
Okay, then we're the same.
Yeah.
So if Dable says punt it, or if somebody in the Bills organization says punt it, would you be upset because we're not being aggressive enough compared to what Mahomes can do?
Yeah, and I think any Bills fan would be upset about that,
Correct.
Especially because of last year.
Right.
That's a go for it, regardless of what statistics say in the booth.
Yeah.
That's something you would go for. Yeah.
So
tough call, but
yeah,
go for it.
So I'm going to give you another situation. This actually happened against the Miami game. We have a 21-7 lead. Kansas City, we just stopped them at the 20-yard line. So they went for something or whatever, and maybe there was an interception, turnover, downs or something, and we're at our 20-yard line. We still have 80 yards to go for the touchdown. Kansas City, on 3rd down, they run the play. We call a timeout, stop the clock, because it's less than 2 minutes remaining in the half. They run another play. We call timeout. We stop the clock. There's less than 2 minutes remaining still in the first half. And now we trot our offense out there because there's a turnover on downs.
With one
timeout. And we run 3 plays right up the middle. Waste our whole entire first half because we don't want to go for it to put the nail in the coffin to a good Kansas City team. Because that happened in Miami. And that was my blossom after that whole thing that happened in Steelers. I'm like, why would we call 2 straight timeouts to preserve time and then run up the gut with Singletary 3 straight plays in a row and waste the entire half when we could have marched down the field and just put the game away?
To go to halftime?
Yeah. Because then at that point, we would have been up Miami 21-0 because we were only up 14-0 at that point.
Who got the ball at half?
Miami did.
They did.
So it made 0 sense.
Well, I mean, except our defense is playing out of their mind.
Sure, yeah. And they had Jacoby Brissett, and you were probably thinking, you're not going to come back anyway.
So there's 2 thoughts and gut feelings that I have in that situation. First is injuries. Don't risk anything that could potentially drive an injury, even though anything can happen on any play in football, specifically in the NFL. The second thing is where are we? We're on the 20?
20, yeah.
All right, so safety's out of the question. Third thing, well, unless, Allen decides to do a Pat Mahomes thing and goes 17 yards backwards and then gets sacked, which at that point they would probably just pick him up and drop him in the end zone for the safety.
Right.
The last thing is our offense is playing at its current level, and then you have 30 minutes to rack up more points. It's not that I'm against. I mean, what's the difference of putting the game away before halftime compared to within the first 2 series of the third quarter.
Because if they get the ball back in half, Kansas City can march all the way down the field and get a touchdown.
Even with our defense.
Potentially. I mean, Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league. No one can say that.
With the Dolphins, I'm fine with it. With the Chiefs, I mean, game by game, right?
Yeah.
So Dolphins, I'm fine with it because I mean, what's their offense going to do?
But then why call the timeouts beforehand to preserve time? That just didn't make sense to me.
What was the conversation between McDermott and Dable?
I know, exactly.
And that's what drives me nuts because we can't properly analyze because we don't have all the information.
Sure,
and then my OCD kicks in because I don't have all the information.
Right,
and I twitch.
Yeah. But conceptually, for someone watching the game, you're going to be like, what is going on? It makes zero
of course.
sense.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to be annoyed until you get all the pieces and you're like, fair.
Well, why aren't they talking to each other then?
Well, it's not that they're not talking to each other. It's that they're not talking to us.
Well,
I don't Sean McDermott, give me a phone call. Let me know.
I don't understand
then I can calm this guy down.
Any situation why you would call 2 timeouts to preserve time and then run up the gut and waste the rest of the time. It doesn't make sense. Regardless of who's making the play call, it's a dumb move.
Or did we call the timeouts to see what they were going to do?
It was 2 straight timeouts to preserve time. They ran it. And
or was there a defensive issue where we had to call the timeouts because they were showing us something that we weren't set up for, and we couldn't audible in time to then.
I mean, hypotheticals are always there.
Well, those are the only realistic things.
Right, sure.
Right? I mean, you call a timeout because they're showing you something that you're not set up for defensively.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is you have the timeouts, and then you basically tell the OC, hey, run the clock out because we have another 30 minutes of gameplay. We're already up a couple scores. Let's just figure out this specific case and then handle it. And then, we still got 30 minutes to go over it, and then we'll make adjustments at halftime, whatever, which realistically is probably what happened. They're like, hey, we're just going to use up what we got, a couple lifelines. If they show us something that we're not 100% in on, then we'll just call a timeout. It literally might be that simple, which is super annoying, but it might be that simple.
Yeah.
So, and it's tough because then, you're watching it and you're just like, that doesn't follow football logic, right? But it might be that.
Yeah.
So whose fault is it? Is it the OC or is it just the organization having a conversation and making that call and then we just got to live with it because we're fans?
Sure. Hey, you never know.
Oh, my God.
Football's tough, man. I will say I will give whoever made the play call credit because during this past game, it was a 4th and 1, and it was Allen running outside the left tackle to get that first down. You remember that play? It was like 4th and 1.
I don't think that was designed.
What do you think was designed then?
Up the gut. And then Allen was Allen.
Sure. Well, okay, but so at least they didn't lateral it 8 yards back to Singletary. That's what I'm getting at.
Yes. But yeah, I think he took that, looked, and he's like, hole closed, and then he's like, being athlete, took over, and then he's just like, I'm going to skirt left because I know that they just collapse the box. Yeah. So I'm just going to skirt left and pick it up. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Yeah. Like you can't coach that.
Right.
That's why it's a famous saying in football. You can't coach that. Similar to defensive ends, if defensive end comes down the line, and then
we're all over the board here.
It's a run play on the offense. Okay. Bills are on defense. You'll see this all. If you watch on Sunday, watch this and you'll see it all the time. Running back takes the handoff. It's just a half, not even a swing. It's a designed run. Running back takes it off tackle and then he tries to get as many yards as possible just off tackle. The opposite side D end won't bow out this huge half moon, crescent moon route and then run and then try to get his angle or catch the running back from behind. First of all, he's never going to because it's the NFL. But then secondly, how can you close that distance and gap? Some things you see specifically at like the high school and then like certain college levels that you can't coach is the D end
pulling out of the block.
The opposite end that the play is going to for the designed run will take his tackle, but then instead of bowing out, he'll literally just run the line of scrimmage. You can't coach that at certain levels. So that occurs every single play in the NFL, and then the only way to really identify that is by watching tape post-game where you're just like, that's a really good play. You can't Like, hey man, we never talked about that. That wasn't designed. That's just a good play on you for being an athlete. Yeah. Like, you can't coach that. That's why it's a famous saying, because stuff like that happens every single play. Specifically, Allen, same thing against Dallas a couple years ago. Allen, the ball's lost.
On Thanksgiving?
Yeah, he picks it up and then drives 2 dudes forward for the first down, and we're all just like, I would literally drink your bathwater. Like, you can't coach that. That's just, he's balling out.
So I want to get your take then on one last thing that happened last week, because this is part of my notes, because I knew that we were going to have this discussion today. But we had 3 straight red zone drives that resulted in field goals. And then on the 4th red zone drive, they were like, Josh, do a read option, do whatever you want. Hand it off, run it, or pass.
The triple read option, yeah.
So from my standpoint,
this is what we texted
being
about.
a viewer, my standpoint being a viewer and looking at this, they didn't give him the option to do any of that in the first 3 drives. Those were all play calls. All of them failed. Now, in this situation where they're saying, Josh, just do whatever you feel works, that ended up. So to me, that's more of an execution than a play call, because someone's giving him you can say that someone's giving him the ability, so he's making the play call to do whatever he wants.
Yep.
But the other 3 red zone drives failed. So now you're putting the ball in Josh Allen's hands, which is why I'm saying that talent can overstep a bad play call. Because now Josh is saying, I'm just going to do whatever I feel works, and we ended up scoring that drive.
And that's a fundamental difference, because that's my point. It's not necessarily the play call, it's the execution of that play call. The play call might have been perfect. It might have been like, hey, this is a 96% chance of working if they come out in this defense. If they don't come out if they don't come out in that specific defense, in their goal line defense, and they show this, audible to this is a 95% chance of being a touchdown. Okay, sounds good. I'm going to call this. Allen, this is your audible. Okay, sounds good. Thanks. 15 seconds are left on the game clock. All communications are over with, and now Allen's on the field alone. So he knows what his check is, and then he also knows what the initial play call is. Okay? So they get to the line of scrimmage, defense shows what they show, offense lines up, and then all of a sudden, he sees what he sees, and he's like, okay, they're showing me this. I'm going to go with the first play call, and then it doesn't work out. The fan is always going to say, shitty call by Dable, and then anybody else that knows football is going to say, it's not necessarily the play call, it's because the defensive end just destroyed the tackle and he missed his block, or this corner watched so much tape that he just circumvented what he was showing, did his own thing, went rogue, and made a play. Or our guy didn't turn his head fast enough. Or like all of those things come up, and that's what I was telling you via text. I'm like, that's the execution level, because there's so much stuff that happens on the field where it's not necessarily the play caller, it's football. Like, it's just what happens when you play football. But the fan gets upset because why would you run that play? Like, that's the first initial instinct.
So those first 3 drives, are you saying I can't blame any of that on a play call? Because this is where I'm getting at, is there's statistically, again, I'm going back to statistics, that's how my mind works. Statistically, you had 3 attempts to get into the end zone, and you called the wrong plays. Regardless of execution, we have an elite offense. They should be able to execute a majority of the time. Not every time, but a majority of the time. We had 3 red zone trips where we couldn't get into the end zone at all. There's a play call aspect to that where you're saying this is bad play calling because we're not able to get past in the red zone into the touchdown, into the end zone. That's what I'm getting at.
I'm with you. I just don't think that's it. I think it literally just boils down to it's football. You can make the best play calling in the world or the worst play calling in the world, but at the end of the day, it's still down to the 22 guys that are on the field playing football, and things happen.
Okay, so that's where you differ. You say it's football. I say it's play calling.
Correct.
Okay, well, we're in understanding at least. Agree to disagree, friend. That's what it comes down to. I think that the play callings weren't good, and you said it's just football. That's just what it is.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, everybody.
I'm glad I never talk about this again. No, I'm just kidding. I love this. And you and I, it's so funny because you and I are so goofy together that when people see us like talking seriously and having like actual discussion about things that we disagree on, they're like, what's going on? Like, this is weird.
I know. But it's also refreshing for us because we're just so like, fun.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about something today. Right. I mean, like, there's like 6 times a week we're seeing each other.
We don't disagree on anything. Like, at all. We're on the same side of the aisle politically. We're on the same side of the aisle, like, motivational, like, business aspect. Obviously, we started a business together. The only thing we disagree on is offensive play calling.
Yep, Brian Daboll. That's it.
It is so funny. So I love having these conversations with you.
We literally need to sit down with him.
Dude, I would love to. Like, we interviewed Reed, and Reed was such an awesome... I feel like we did him a disservice because we didn't have the good cameras. You and I were kind of like... What's up, Reed?
I mean, we were starstruck, but at the same time, I don't think so. It was like an organic conversation. Yeah. Plus, we can always, there's things are in the works. Yeah. Put it that way.
But, like, it would be very interesting. We're not a Buffalo Bills podcast at all. We're a small business in Buffalo podcast. But if we got the chance to interview somebody on the Buffalo Bills, like Daboll or like McDermott or like Allen, it'd be sick. Like, we were so happy to interview Reed. And if Reed ever wants to come on again, or if he wants to have us on his podcast, we can do that.
I'm so down.
Yeah. I don't know. Let us know what you think. Would you like us to interview Bills players? Because I'm sure that they might see that one comment and be like, I might consider it. You never know.
I'm ready.
Well, today we drank Old Forester 1897. If you're interested in hearing today's episode, you can go back and listen to the Wednesday whiskey review we did of that. There's a fascinating story behind that date specifically, so if you're interested, tune in. If you like today's episode, please make ssure you subscribe. It's absolutely free to do, and it helps us with our analytics. Also, leave a comment down below and like this video. Let us know that we're doing a good job. I mean, we're going to continue grinding, but it's nice to hear your guys' feedback. If you want to provide your feedback more directly, you can always go to our Patreon and sign up for one of the 5 tiers. That way you can get in on what whiskey we're reviewing a week early and provide your tasting notes, and then also get these episodes a week early too. Now that we're in Bills season, it's kind of prime to get these episodes a week early. Because
no doubt,
this Kansas City discussion, you're going to know exactly when this happens, and you're not going to be like 2 weeks late. So there's a benefit there. But thank you all for joining. Obviously, we appreciate every single one of you. Patrons, we appreciate you just a little bit more. You're a part of our happy hour crew, so we love you guys. But always remember, if you're going to take a bottle of this, or if you're going to drink any other whiskey today, to drink responsibly, be a good person. And Michael,
do not litter.
We're out.